Welcome to CIHT Podcasts.
So at the start of 2020, Malcom Dare, Highways England's Executive Director for Commercial and Procurement, set a challenge to the highways sector. He challenged the whole of Highways England's supply chain to halve the accident rate within the next 12 months. Welcome to the CIHT Podcast. Today we are looking at a key supplier, Kier Highways, and how they rose to this challenge and halved their accident rate in a very short timescale. Malcom is here to discuss this, along with Joe Incutti Group MD for Kier, Scott Cooper, MD for Strategic Highways from Kier, and Neil Wilson, Head of Safety, Health, Environment and Insurance from Kier. So Kier has managed to meet the goal Malcom set within 6 months of him setting it. How did you get your accident frequency rate, AFR, to 0.03? And talk us how you managed this. Perhaps, Joe, could you pick that one up?
Hi, Justin. So I'm Joe Incutti. I'm the Group Managing Director for the Kier Highways business. Let me start by saying that this is an unprecedented performance for Kier Highways. We've now completed 6 million hours. That's across our strategic highways and local highways business. 6 million hours without a RIDDOR reportable accident. That's enabled us to halve our RIDDOR AFR in the strategic highways business. That's the business where we undertake works and projects for Highways England. We've halved our RIDDOR AFR from 0.06 in December to 0.03 in May. When Malcom set this challenge at the start of the year, I have to say it caused some anxiety and stress amongst the team in Kier Highways, but it was also highly motivational for us, and we took the challenge away, brainstormed it, we wanted to do something with it, and we wanted to develop a plan that was going to drive a step change in our safety performance. I think it would be remiss of me not to say something about the coronavirus pandemic as well at the same time. So this during this period where we've been driving our safety performance improvements, 3 months of that 5-month period has effectively been during the pandemic with lockdown restrictions. So that introduced a whole set of new challenges in terms of having to embrace the new site operating procedures. But it also, and this is something I've discussed with Malcom on and off over recent weeks, it also helped to introduce a new and sustained focus on safety throughout that 5-month period from January to May. Coming back to your specific question in terms of how we did it, well, I think the foundations of any improvement in safety require us to get what I would call get the basics right. And we have a concept in Kier that we call the 5 SHEA basics. And we reinforce the importance and relaunch the campaign in Kier Highways around the 5 SHEA basics. Those 5 SHEA basics are inductions, risk assessments, safe systems of work, point of work risk assessments, and training and competencies. Beyond that, we recognise that one of the most fundamental drivers of safety performance is behaviours and culture. So we've been in parallel running a behavioural safety programme, which is really innovative and is driving, we believe, the right culture and safety performance across our organisation. And then lastly, there's 2 forms of innovation that have been carried out within the business. One is an innovation in approach, and we've been using tools like the bow-tie model to assess risks and implement control measures to mitigate those risks. And we've also been introducing safety innovations, which are active safety innovations that reduce the likelihood of incidents. An example of that is InstaBoom, which has reduced the incidence of overhead cable strikes, and also some control measures we've put in place around unsafe loads moving to and from sites. So in summary, this plan is multi-dimensional, and it's also transportable to other businesses, whether those are businesses in our supply chain or businesses in our peer group. And the challenge for us now is making that plan a living, breathing thing, so we don't just put it in a top drawer and forget about it, but we actually keep reinventing it and reintroducing new concepts to keep it alive and keep driving continuous improvement in our safety performance.
Thanks very much. And just to clarify, SHEA stands for Safety, Health and Environment. Is that right?
Yeah.
But you did mention, obviously, during this time, COVID-19 emerged. I mean, what's it been like being on site during the last 12 weeks then? What are some of the issues that you've encountered?
Hi, Neil Wilson, Head of Safety, Health, Environment and Assurance for Kier Highways. Preparation for COVID-19 when the pandemic hit us, we were working closely with the Construction Leadership Council to develop the Kier site operating procedures. So that was government guidance and industry leaders that set out some guidance for social distancing and basically maintaining the norm where we could on our operational sites. So we as a business have taken those and adapted them and implemented them into the business. And we've limited people on site. We've maintained kind of traffic routes. We've put in control measures for kind of if we need to encroach on the 2 metre social distancing, wearing of RPE, single-use cabs where we can, developing kind of site operational procedures to ensure that's maintained not only on live sites but also in depots as well. And then where we are at the moment is we're in version 9 of the Kier SOP document, and we are in the transitional phase at the moment across the entire Kier Group and more importantly Kier Highways for remobilising lots of our sites, offices and depots to try and bring some of our guys back into work so we can go back to business as normal within the back office support. So what we've started to do is we're looking at kind of welfare areas, we're looking at office and hot desk allocations, we're looking at transit routes, not only what that we've put in post on sites that we're doing in offices as well. We're looking at kind of segregating welfare areas, rotating staff start times, rotating canteen work breaks. There is a huge element of work that we've put in place. But more importantly, what we've seen across the networks where we've implemented this is the guys have really rose to the challenge on it. And some of us have been out on VLTs in the last week or so. And it's been absolutely kind of heartwarming, exemplary to see some of the things that our guys have thought. They've taken the SOP guidance and then adapted it and amended it and embraced it and kind of up-revved it. So it's been fantastic. It really has been fantastic, and credit to the people that work for Kier and within the Highways England network for doing that.
Talking about rising to the challenge, we've got Malcom Dare here. And you set quite a challenge to the sector at the start of the year. Obviously, things have emerged with COVID since then. But why did you feel at that point it was the right time to set the challenge to the supply chain, to the whole of the Highways England supply chain, to half accident rates?
I mean, very simply, we had a successful year last year in the sense that within Highways England, we took the AFR rate down from about 0.05, 0.06 to 0. But the supply base AFR rate stayed flat at around about the 0.06, 0.07 range. But you have to put that in context of the sense that if you go back 5 years, it was significantly higher. So the AFR rate has been very, very steadily dropping over the last 3 to 5 years. And there's been a lot of work goes on between Highways England and the supply base. When you begin to flatten out, you then have to do something that causes a further jump, causes a further sort of bit of focus. So the challenge was very simply that nobody wants to have any injuries, nobody wants to see any employees injured, hurt, etc. But we have to make another step change in movements, and that links in with the Road Period 2 funding that we've just had, which is the next 5 years, 27 billion, etc., etc. So it was all around timing, all around flattening out, all around the fact that in December, January, every conversation I was having, people were accepting there was a way of going further. But the specific challenge and the discussions that I had with Joe and Kier was what about beyond your own business? What about into the tier 2s, the tier 3s, and what about the cultural aspect? Because a lot of the very successful safety organisations do that via culture as opposed to via just a traditional tell. And the encouraging part is that's the part that when you look at the Kier plan, they've really embraced the leadership element internally within Kier, the culture change, as well as the supply base and helping the supply base to embed it. Because a lot of the work is not done by the tier 1s. A lot of the work is done by the tier 2s and 3s. And to not address that and not work with those suppliers will always mean you don't get as good a solution as you can. But by doing that, we can then make that next step change down from 0.06 to 0.03 on average across the entire supply base.
And you mentioned culture, but is the guidance to support the sector in moving to the reduced AFR?
The message has always been drive safety down and down and down and down. There's not guidance in the sense of, you do the following things. We, as a business, we don't work on the basis of we will tell you what to do. You simply have to do it. We work on the basis of we are outlining the intent. How a supplier delivers that intent is their call, because they understand their business, they understand their supply chain, they understand their market far more than we do. But it's simply outlining the intent, and the intent is we just want to continually drive safety down as low as we can. And there is a good track record of Highways England working with the supply base to achieve that. It's now just about how do we make that next step change. And that was the conversations that Joe and I were having in December, January time to provide that challenge as to how do we make the next step change.
So Scott and Neil, so what happens now that you've achieved the goal? Is it about maintaining the status quo?
I think it's more than that. If I think back to Mark Byard, Highways England's Health and Safety Director, and the last time we had a socially interacting workshop, Engagement Council, Mark presented a slide and it showed somebody swimming across a very calm sea, but below that swimming there's a shark, and for us a RIDDOR can be a slip or a trip or a fall away or a cable strike away. So it's, whilst we've got to 0.3, it's really good, but we really have to maintain a focus. And so our plan has to evolve and change, and we have to keep looking at the actions and thinking what else we can do. And so we've shared it with the supply chain throughout the production of it, through sections of our supply chain. But in the last few weeks, we've sent it out to the top 20, which will probably cover 80% of our spend. We've sent our plan out and asked them to commit to doing a similar plan. We've offered our help to produce that plan with similar actions to ours and actions of their own. And sort of we're looking to set up some forums, aren't we, Neil?
Just to add to that, the one thing that's important about driving the improvements and what we don't want to do is, obviously we want to maintain the status quo, but obviously more important is we need to push performance excellence. So we need to be kind of pushing for the next kind of 10%, 20%, 30% until we get down to kind of zero AFR. And the only way to do that is through the people. It's through the people that we put to work on a daily basis, the people that we employ, the people that we engage with, whether it be our clients or tier 2s, tier 3s, tier 1 supply chains. And more importantly, the common theme on that is the leadership and the empowerment and the accountability that we give to people to ensure that they are fit, robust, they've got the right tools to do the job. And they feel empowered to challenge as well, because the mantra that we've got within Kier is nothing is so important that we cannot take the time to do it safely, and that has really been shown over the last 12 weeks with the COVID kind of processes that we put in place, that people have actually taken the time to take stock, think about what they need to do, challenge where they need to, but more importantly, put the guys and girls and the people on the networks to work safely. So the common theme for me and for us is to engage the right people at the right time, the key stakeholders, ensure that the right leadership is there, going back to basics, but pushing that performance excellence for the business and sharing that learning across our supply chain to make sure that they are fully engaged and they understand what Malcolm's team and HE want, but also more importantly and also inclusively is what we're trying to achieve as a unit.
Probably worth picking up on as well the lost time incidents, and it's all accidents. The RIDDOR rate is the lagging indicator. when somebody's had the 7 days off, but lost time incidents has to be a focus for us. And we've got members of our supply chain who are on a 0 AFR already. And so for them, it's kind of, they can share with us what they do to achieve that, but then equally, look at their lost time incidents as well. And can they halve those, going forward? So it's a real focus on any incident.
Just RIDDOR stands for reporting of injuries, diseases and dangerous occurrences, but you're saying that the accident frequency rate comes before that. But could you explain that a little bit more, how that's calculated? Because that's an interesting component of this. I think it's a sort of rate per hours worked, isn't it?
So it's based on how many incidents have occurred. So the incident is something where someone has incurred an injury, broken bone, amputation, or they've incurred more than 7 days off from work due to an injury. That's when you have to classify it as a RIDDOR. And diseases, hand-arm vibration, dermatitis, any of those kind of respiratory diseases as well need to be reported under RIDDOR. So that's what RIDDOR is. It's kind of the statute that we govern all accidents by, and that's set by the HSE. But AFR and AIR, which are two of the same kind of nominal lagging indicators, are used across industries just to measure performance where people are.
Could I just sort of chip in to help? So we use AFR and we measure AFR. We also measure lost time incidents within Highways England. So for instance, in Highways now, when we hit the AFR down at 0 against RIDDORs, we're now really driving hard on lost time incidents. RIDDOR is just a standard measure. It's as simple as that. But as obviously the lower you get with RIDDORs, the more you're going to focus on the lost time incidents as well. It's just the sort of the safety pyramid of where do you go to drive that improvement. So we're all, and the key thing here is the whole industry is using the same measures, which is the power of it, that it's a common language, a common measure that everyone understands. And the success of Kier and being able to halve it so quickly is against a standard and thoroughly tested and accepted measure by the whole, highway sector and industry. And
Malcolm, just on that, the task in the supply chain like this is quite a breakthrough in safety, but what does it mean for the end customer and the road user?
I'd agree. It could be seen as a sort of slightly radical approach, but I also think it's seen as a very common sense approach because it's a common language that everyone is trying to continuously improve on. Before I answer the question around the road user, customer, the other thing the industry's done in the last year is there's a group called the Supply Chain Safety Leadership Group, which is made up of a couple of Highways England employees and then employees from different suppliers across the entire supply chain, of which Kier, has been a member. And the aim of that group is to establish common intent, common standards in order to help everyone drive the safety performance independently of organisation, but to sort of get everyone understanding the direction and the common intent of where the sector's going. Another part of that has been the Highways England Passport, which again is a way of standardising inductions and helping employees not have to go through repeated inductions if they're going to different sites, different employees, etc. So in the background, the industry during 2019 has done a lot of work to help really come together and drive a commonality of intent across all suppliers in order to make a change in the overall safety. So to me, it's a natural evolution in recognition of the fact that the supply base is increasingly working very, very well together to then set the stretch goals to the supply base that recognises the good work that's been going on, but also to put a numeric value around it. So, okay, there's a lot of good work going on, but now halve where you were. To me, it was a natural evolution. It wasn't particularly radical to me. It was simply a natural evolution to recognise all the work that's been going on. Now, I mean, to the end customer, to the road user, obviously the safer the environment, the safer it is for all parties, be it people on the site, travelling public, etc. But a safer environment will also mean that the likelihood of completing early is far stronger. Therefore, to an end customer, it means that we're able to lift the roadworks more quickly, rather than a constant long, to a travelling public, there's a constant long, drawn-out series of roadworks. So none of this is about putting anyone at risk. It's simply about making it safer. Therefore, a far better environment for people to either travel through or work in. And some of the safety aspects has been around incursions into the roadworks by the travelling public. And if there's clearly things that can be improved, that focusing on the vehicle incursion both protects the travelling public as well as the employees on the sites, as an example. So it's a win-win to all parties, and it's very much in line with the sort of the values and the ethics of Highways England, but also very much in line with the values and the ethics that the Supply Chain Safety Leadership Group are now really helping the supply base adopt.
Malcolm made an excellent point about if we deliver works safely with a view on keeping our road workers safe, then the likelihood is that we'll complete the works quicker and more efficiently, which will enable us to get off-site, off the network quicker and open up the road back to its original condition or an improved, enhanced condition for the road users. But at the same time as Malcolm setting the challenge around halving our RIDDOR AFR, he set another challenge, which was to look at ways to improve the customer experience on the network, and specifically look at 60 mile per hour speed limits through our roadworks. And during the currency of this plan, we actually also introduced 60 mile an hour speed limits on our smart motorways, initially as a trial, but then it's now embedded on our smart motorways, where we don't have live works being undertaken at any time. We'll section off that part of the closure, and we'll allow higher speed limits of 60 mile an hour through that section of the motorway. And the only reason we've done that, the sole reason we've done that, is to improve the customer experience by reducing journey times through the roadworks.
How much can technology help improve the safety of sites?
You can use active safety systems that prevent accidents, like Instaboom, which is a system that prevents a vehicle from entering a closure that could result in a overhead cable strike. And we're always looking at new innovations. Another example of something that we're looking at, but it's still at the trial stage, is the automated cone laying machine, where we'll take people out of harm's way by using a machine to put cones down rather than a team of people to put the cones down.
So that was sort of some of the technology shifts, having automated machines to lay cones, for instance. These are some of the automation at sites that reduce the risk to, I guess, people being there on site. Yeah. The only other question is probably a naive question. You'll say, well, the accident frequency rate's a good number, but how many accidents are you talking about each year? What's the sort of scale of accidents just in kind of raw numbers annually on the Highways England network?
I mean, the calculation's the industry standard, so it's measured in that way, in the way that Neil explained it, and it's the calculation allows an element of normalisation for hours worked, etc. If you looked at it in the sense of the sheer number of accidents, you would see the suppliers that are doing more man-hours work on the network would be having a far higher value against them, simply because they're putting more man-hours in, therefore the chance of an accident are higher. So the reason we don't talk about numbers is to get that's a balance and fairness.
What's important to understand is the people that are exposed. So the risk proprietary to the people exposed is the bit that needs to be measured, and that's the bit that needs to be challenged. And what we're doing as a business is, as Scott alluded to there, is what we're doing now is we have kind of, and Highways England are doing the same, is you will only affect the RIDDORs and the outputs of the RIDDORs if you concentrate on the performance triangle. So the way to affect your fatalities, your over 7 days, your kind of amputations, finger breaking, etc., and your LTIs is to review your near misses. Review your near misses, which are the bits that potentially, if they'd have gone one way or the other because of the roll of the dice, could have incurred on someone being injured or someone kind of having more than 7 days off. We then review them as a team, we review them as a board. We then develop campaigns to ensure training, competence, delivery of focus campaigns to ensure that we're managing those and we're giving the teams the right tools to manage those particular situations so they don't happen again. And that's the only way, is the people, the leadership, the tools, focusing on the near misses, focuses on the kind of the lower kind of tiers of the SHEA performance triangle to ensure that they don't get elevated to anything else. That's the way that you'll drive and improve on SHEA performance, and that's what we've been doing across Kier Highways.
Yeah, and just to echo that, to help Justin, when you look at the number of man hours that Kier work on the highway network compared to other suppliers, it is significantly higher. So the fact that if you look at a numeric number of instances so low against such a significantly higher number of man hours on a rolling 12-month basis, again, is further credit as to what's going on. And it is, to me, I mean, it's I think technology can help, and perversely, C19, as Joe's seen and other suppliers have seen, C19 has driven a greater awareness in employees about their environment. Therefore, we're seeing that reflection in a greater awareness in general safety because of the improved awareness around C19. But so much of this is about culture, the leadership, and engaging with the tier 2s and the tier 3s. And to me, that's where Kier's success has come from. Traditionally, I think people have stopped at sort of the tier 1 level, or they've stopped within their own business. That culture, that leadership, that working with your supply chain is really where the benefits have come from. And if, Kier's the biggest supplier to Highways England on a sort of a man hours perspective, if a supplier of that size can achieve this, then the reason I challenge the supply base is, why can't other people do that? If you go back 3-5 years, the AFR rate 3-5 years ago was far higher. So there has been a very good improvement over time. It's all been about how do we stop it, flattening out, and how do we make that next step to keep the downward pressure on it.
Thanks very much for all your time. I appreciate it, and appreciate it's great stuff, actually. It's really admirable work that you're doing to try and get a figure down to zero, because obviously that's so important, I guess, for anyone who's working on the network, that they're not harmed at all.